Citations gaming enthusiasts, George Minot here. I apologise for taking so long to make this video. First, I waited a couple months to play this game on holiday because video games are much more fun when played on holiday. And then my Galaxy 2 video performed so well that I reached 1,000 subscribers, so my top 10 Wii games video definitely took priority over a video about this game that like 5 people have played. Oh, you want to know how my holiday went? That's nice of you. Well, I had fun playing Miniland Mayhem, and
George, your food's gonna get cold.
In a minute.
I swear I did other stuff too. Oh yeah, I played Pokemon Legends Arceus for the first time. And since Arceus and Miniland Mayhem are such similar games, I will now proceed to make sweeping statements about them both. And it has to be said, Miniland Mayhem handles its exposition much more efficiently than Legends Arceus does.
I think this might be my favourite game in the series so far. The first one was excellent and full of charm, but there were a decent few levels that were either tedious or annoying to execute, and not all the level types were very good. The second one had way more problems than it had virtues. The third one was a big step up but reused a lot of assets and had some clear growing pains. But with Miniland Mayhem, I was grinning from ear to ear throughout 98% of my playtime. As I was mentally planning out this script while playing the game on holiday, I legitimately had a really hard time coming up with any negatives or even really any nuanced thoughts about it other than, "This is great!" I suppose this is a good problem to have though. It'll probably mean this review is going to be the shortest of the bunch and poor exhausted editing George will have significantly less work to do. Good. He deserves a break. Let's just get straight into the review. The story category continues to dwindle in relevance for this series. It's only here out of obligation because we need the ape to have something to be mad about. And the solution to the 16 worlds worth of monkey pursuit and conflict was to give him a toy. Mario should just take precautions to make sure DK gets whatever he came for. What's that, Donkey Kong? You're the 101st in line? Oh, silly me. The sign was supposed to say, free mini Paulines for the first 101 customers. Here's your toy. Sorry about the typo. Mario's just a bad CEO at this point. The little plotty animations are charming, I like this cute little train, and Pauline's voice actress does a good job. She really goes hard with the screams and does an excellent job of making her sound extremely pathetic when she says,
Please, save me.
But that's about all there is to say. I sincerely hope the next game doesn't even bother with a story so I can stop putting these tiny sections that basically just serve to dock the game's score for no reason. I have nothing against them for having nothing plots. The story isn't what I play these games for. But it's a review, so I feel like I need to quantify everything about each game I discuss. Oh well, time to be mean to this excellent game for no reason. At least they bothered to make animations for the cutscenes this time, though unlike Minis March Again, which had the funny JK, it was just a test ending, this game's plot was devoid of funny moments or anything noteworthy really. I guess Mario didn't say any slurs, so I won't give it a 0. 1 out of 6. Miniland Mayhem is a very nice looking game. For a simple Lemmings style game on the Nintendo DS, I really don't think it could have done much better. The models all look decent on the small screens and are animated quite nicely, and a lot of the backgrounds look extremely good and even feature a lot of moving parts. Very lively. All the areas are very theme park, themed, and look fantastic. You've got your bright and colourful ones, your darker colour palettes. Teacup Twirl has a really fun moving background, but it randomly has the British version of the Game is Grey problem from the first game, for some reason? Speaking of which, I actually got that discovery of mine to be featured on Super Mario Broth, and I'm very pleased with that. Apparently I'm the first person to notice this huge difference between versions of a 20-year-old game, and that kinda blows my mind. But then there's the stupendous, immaculate vibes of the best world in the game. Watch out, Mystic Forest, it might not be the best world anymore. Cannon Cove. The pirate ships moving on the waves, the palm trees, the distant islands, the delightful shades of pastel blues and turquoise. It's just marvelous. I've loved this world ever since I was a kid. Wait, hang on, this game came out in 2011. I didn't play this as a kid. I was 14 when it came out. Wow, this is the first Mario vs. Donkey Kong of my teenage years. Well, I still felt like a kid, and Cannon Cove became ingrained in my brain in the best way. When I was playing March of the Minis for this review series, I actually misremembered thinking it was part of that game. But I'm glad I was wrong because this game is actually good. Speaking of the world backgrounds and themes, this game, like the first and third ones before it, has plus worlds in equal measure to its regular ones. And of course, they have different colour schemes. They mostly look the same, but usually orange and or beige, which, as you might be able to tell, is a colour scheme I can get behind. Part of Miniland's visuals that's linked to the gameplay is the way the background becomes black and white when you're drawing girders or ladders and the like. Of course, I'll talk about this more in depth in the gameplay section of the video, but for now, it's definitely helpful that the background becomes British when you're drawing girders so you can focus on the foreground. For most of the DS games I've played, I generally wouldn't say that their visuals are exactly their strongest suit. They usually use 3D models instead of sprites, and while the DS can render 3D environments and models decently well, they're often far from great looking. In my opinion, it's the sprite-based games like Super Princess Peach and Yoshi's Island DS that look the best on the system. They aged the best. But would Miniland Mayhem look better if it had sprites instead? Perhaps, it's hard to say. Since all the minis are so small on the screen, it really offsets the DS's 3D jank. Its visuals are seldom that good, Canon Cove aside, but I feel like there's so little they could have done better that I have no choice but to give it a 5 out of 6. Pokemon Legends Arceus, on the other hand, has fully 3D environments and it looks truly fantastic. Really like the art style. That's a point for it, and that puts these extremely similar games neck and neck. Miniland's music is excellent. Not relying on covers of tunes from the previous games like the second and third ones did a lot of, the majority of this music is wholly original, with the odd occasional well-placed cover or homage here and there. Coaster Hill's music is made of wonderfully jaunty renditions of Super Mario Bros. 2 main theme. Jumpy Jungle covers a tune that I'm pretty sure has been covered by other Mario vs. Donkey Kong games too, but in my opinion this game contains the best ever version of this song. It's so hype. This track literally had me turning up my DS up to full volume and dancing to it in the hallway of our old house, much to the cringe of my family. Tea Time Twirl is a good world, but I do not care to hear the Peach's Castle theme remade for the 100th time. Stop giving me traumatic flashbacks to that world in the second game, please. Hey, remember when I said this game is mostly just original music and then I immediately proceeded to contradict myself by talking about 3 worlds in a row that cover old songs? Scriptwriting is funny like that. Anyway, time to stop being a hypocrite. This series has a history of producing absolute banger Spooky Mansion themes, though most of the games have just covered the ones in the first game. This time though, they actually made new music, and it's deliciously funky as you'd expect. Sandstorm Steps has some decent desert vibes in its music, not bad, not amazing. I may not be a fan of the gameplay in the magnetic levels, but Cosmic Adventure's music has some great sounding low techno beats that almost make me forgive the kinda unfun level designs. I've already mentioned it, but Canon Cove is pure bliss, and that's in no small part due to its exquisite soundtrack. All of this game's music is good, but Canon Cove makes me feel things. Super Skywheel's music is so intensely carnivalesque, that is a word, yes, that you simply cannot help but bob and sway along to its merry tunes. This is what happiness sounds like. But also shout out to the boss theme of this world. I really feel like I'm fighting an evil ringmaster who's commanding his legion of clown minions to attack me. Speaking of the boss themes, they really went above and beyond this time by making a unique boss theme for every world. And they all sound so good that I'm always annoyed when I pick up hammers and the music gets replaced by the hammer theme. The majority of this game's music is really good and catchy, really elevating the general gameplay experience. It carries on the series tradition of each world having 3 different level tunes, each more complex and energetic than the last, giving the player a rewarding sense of progression through each world. As usual, I don't really have much to say about the sound effects, though I shall say that the sound design for the removal and placing of the game's various gizmos and girders is very satisfying and feels natural.
Though regarding the sound effects, I did forget to mention in the script that this game does have a very funny closing the DS sound. Hang on, let me try and get it.
Hey, you, come back again.
Not that one.
Ow, my head.
That's the one. So I like to imagine little Mario standing in my DS and I close the lid and it bangs his head on it. I feel bad every time I get the ow, my head noise. It's very funny though.
I wouldn't say this game's OST is among my favourites, so I'm afraid it can't achieve top marks, but its soundtrack is still stupendous, very worthy of a 5 out of 6 rating. But Pokemon Legends Arceus did that thing I hate in games, where the overworld is mostly devoid of music, so I'm afraid that's another point in Miniland Mayhem's favour.
Just want to show you this official little Mini Mario plush I got a couple months back. I've wanted a real Mini Mario toy literally since I was a kid, and I'm astonished it took them this long to actually follow through with such a no-brainer idea. But I'm glad they got around to it eventually, though I would have preferred an actual wind-up toy or those tiny little posable figurines they used to advertise the remake. I'd legit buy like 5 of those if I could. There we go. And now here's a new addition to my shelf! Want to hear more about my holiday? I wasn't distracted by how fun this game was the whole time I was there. I did other things too. Well, let's see. I went bowling, did an obstacle course up in the trees, read a new book, and of course badminton. Come on, George! Okay, I might have gotten a little distracted then, I suppose.
This game is designed so wonderfully that I think it might be the best in the series. From beginning to end, it's just fun and satisfying puzzles the whole way through. Each new world introduces another new and exciting mechanic, and almost all of them are fun to use and add layer after layer of depth to the gameplay and interesting options for the player to manipulate the environment. Miniland Mayhem has just about perfected this style of game. The core of the gameplay this time is the removal and drawing of these girders, conveyor belts and ladders, as well as picking up and placing objects such as springs or warp pipes. Love the movable warp pipes especially, such a clever idea for these levels. All done with the touchscreen of course. The girder drawing system feels like a natural step up from the pink blocks of the third game, allowing you to draw lines between any two blocks provided you have the resources. The slopes here are less awkward than the staircases of old. This and the other collectible level gizmos not only give the player an immensely gratifying amount of freedom over any level's layout, far more than the second and third games offered, but is also designed deliciously well. When drawing between blocks, the background fades into grayscale, and all motion in the level halts while you have the stylus pressed against the screen, giving you all the time you want to think about where you want to draw to. This simple design choice makes a world of difference. I really love a good puzzle game, but the minute a puzzle game makes me feel rushed or like I have to juggle too many things in a short period of time, did I just say the same thing twice? It suddenly becomes my worst nightmare. And the way this game lets you frequently stop the action and take a few moments to think really makes the game for me. I also take great pleasure in using the many different and fascinating ways Miniland lets me manipulate the environment. They're all really simple to understand, but gradually get more complex as the levels progress and they get mixed together. But astonishingly, they never get so complicated that I feel overwhelmed, even when I completed Secret Storage. That can't have been an easy balancing act for the devs to pull off. Alrighty, let's do my usual breakdown and rating of the different types of levels in Miniland Mayhem. Brace yourselves, there's a lot of them. Of course, there's the basic normal levels, which follow the same rules as the previous game. You're not allowed to let any minis die, and chains are mandatory. Level design and the enjoyability of certain gimmicks may vary, but this game is, in general, extremely fun to play. As I've already said, this game's key concepts and gameplay are top shelf. 10 out of 10. Next we have the multi-door levels. Minis besides the Mario ones were first introduced in the second game, but until Miniland Mayhem, their inclusion in the game hasn't really mattered, simply there to offer a little meaningless variety to levels. But this time around, the devs actually decided to give the different minis actual gameplay purpose. In these levels, you rescue the different minis from their capsules and guide them to their specific doors, making sure not to let all of your active minis reach the goal before releasing all the others first. This is a very fun kind of level that adds a fun extra layer to how one approaches the puzzles. I've always thought it a shame there's only one of these in each world, so this was a level style that I made a lot of in the construction zone back in the day. 10 out of 10. Then we have the key levels again. Last time I did a cop-out by saying they were sometimes better and sometimes worse than normal levels, so I gave them the same rating. Well, in this game they're even closer quality-wise, because the game being designed in a more concise, freeing way makes it less awkward and difficult to rearrange the minis order. Now it's kinda just more fun than regular levels with no downsides. 10 out of 10, again. Remember those last 3 bosses in March of the Minis I went on and on about how they were really good and pretty much the only fun part of that game? Well, they're back and better than before! The concept here is to use girders and cannons and the like to get the Mini Marios up to the 3 ladders that allow them to attack DK, which is already better than those bosses from the second game conceptually, because having to reach 3 separate different ladders while walking the correct direction is much more interesting than a single level where you just do the same thing a bunch of times. Like pretty much much everything else in the game, these levels are easy to grasp but hard to master. They're also objectively better than the ones in March of the Minis because this game's controlling the environment is vastly superior to that game's controlling of the minis. And frankly, there's much more room for variety in level design here than there was in the firing Mini Marios out of cannons bosses the previous two games relied on. Here, DK fights back by dropping barrels and other nasties, and by pressing a button that breaks random blocks for drawing girders, which really keeps you on your toes and forces you to adapt to your ascent plans regularly. The only version of this boss I don't like is the Warped Mansion ones, where sometimes the randomized pipes can end up arranged in a way that makes it impossible to progress, so you just have to hope DK is generous on the next shuffle. While playing through it recently, this resulted in me getting stuck for several cycles in a row. But hey, only 2 out of 16 is a darned good bad fight to great fight ratio. Let's give them a 9, docking it 1 point for containing 2 of the 5 levels in this game I actively disliked, but don't let its slightly less than perfect score undermine its greatness.
Pessimism test. If you notice the 1% black dot before the 99% white paper, you owe me your subscription. I will teach you to see the bright side of things.
Next up in the Oops All Bangers list is the minigames. Certainly a step up in complexity from Shy Guy Smash. This time you have to draw slides to sort the various minis into the correct boxes for a high score. And they're all immensely fun. A great little change of pace at the end of each world that get tougher as the game goes on, but that only makes them more fun. There's a few different kinds too. Sometimes you'll have to sort specific minis into the shuffling boxes. Sometimes you'll need to divert them all into the ever-moving quadruple multiplier box. It's a bit faster paced than the main game, but not overly so. Adore these every time. 10 out of 10. I hope all these perfect scores aren't starting to feel less valuable. Next up is the special world Rainbow Summit, whose levels are unlocked by collecting M tokens, which are obtained once per level or every 100 coins, which is silly if you ask me. They should just be finite. I don't understand why they work this way, and the only explanation I can think of is they wanted to make it possible to grind for them, but why would anyone want to do that? These levels are fun, but that doesn't mean I want to play the same one over and over. Anyway, these levels have the same gimmick the Plus World in the third game did. You get a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then all the minis begin marching without your consent. These levels aren't terrible per se, but I'm not keen. They make me feel more rushed and stressed than in the rest of the game, removing an important piece of autonomy from the experience in a way that flusters and frustrates me. I'm glad these levels exist in the game for the variety they add. There's gotta be people who aren't as bothered by them as me, and probably some folk that prefer them. And I'm even more glad they're optional, and the gimmick for this game's Plus Worlds is far more fun than this. Among these levels are the small handful of ones that made me frustrated and impatient enough that I had to give up on them for a while. Something that happened virtually every level in the second game, but I'm happy to report only occurred a few times in this optional world in this game. Half fun, half annoying. 5 out of 10. Though only appearing twice, the good old boss formula from 2 and 3 is back as the 2 climactic levels of Miniland's 2 halves. I don't think they're that much better than the ones in 2 and 3, but they're certainly cooler. DK is manhandling a Ferris wheel for crying out loud. He throws missiles at you. Sometimes he spins the whole thing around, terrifying poor Pauline and grabbing your Mini Mario to hurl back at you. And the music is appropriately epic. I'm also pretty sure the aiming mechanics are more accurate than they were before. The versions of this kind of fight does have a lot more variety in the second and third games though, so I'll just give this iteration 1 point more than them. A 7 out of 10. Next we arrive in the Plus Worlds. Here we are given several different kinds of minis every level, and must get them to the door in the correct order in order to succeed. This definitely makes the game harder, but honestly, the game was already pretty easy, and this game is so well designed that rearranging the minis order isn't a pain. A lesser game with this kind of gimmick would be a nightmare, but here, the game just got more fun. There are a couple of negatives, however. Firstly, these are all old level layouts. I hope you really enjoyed those 94 levels because you're about to play them again! This doesn't bother me as, 1, they feel different with the new gimmick making even the easiest of levels now feel challenging, and 2, especially if you play this game over the course of a few weeks like I did, it was actually a long time ago that you played the original versions of the levels. As a kid, as an early teen, I don't think I even noticed the levels had the same layouts, even though I played through the whole thing at least twice. Though it definitely would have been better if they had made another unique 94 levels, it's very impressive to see this game pull off the whole, now complete the whole game again but a little differently this time, better than Super Mario Galaxy did it. They're even better the second time around. The second negative about the Plus Worlds, on the more nitpicky side of things, is this screen. Every level makes you watch the camera pan over it, and then shows you this plaque which tells you the correct exit order, which is information you already have on the top screen at all times, every time you start or restart a level, and you can't skip it. And these levels are generally pretty tough, so you end up restarting often. This always feels like a huge waste of time despite only taking about 10 seconds. Having to watch it so frequently gets real old real fast. It seems small, but these levels are so fun, it's a shame this annoying design choice gets in the way. Celeste would never. Plus World varieties of levels lightning round! If it weren't for the downsides I just mentioned, normal Plus World levels would legitimately be worth an 11 out of 10. But alas, they get an 8. The funny thing about Plus World key levels is they're just easier Plus World levels. Now some of the ordering of the minis is even more mandatory. It's just harder to get it wrong. Feels a little redundant, gonna be honest. 7 out of 10. Plus World multi-door levels are another variety that could have been an 11 out of 10 if it weren't for those unfortunate drawbacks. But alas, another 8. And then since the rest of the level types are just the same style with a few actual differences in their Plus World versions, we just have Plus World Rainbow Summit. It sucks! I completed this game as a teenager, but for my recent playthrough I decided to only soft complete it, so to speak. I happily completed all the regular worlds and most of the Plus Worlds, but I only dipped my toes into the extra worlds. Partially because I couldn't be bothered, but largely because I really don't like the rancid combination of the complexity of the Plus levels with the lack of autonomy of Rainbow Summit. I start these levels and immediately want to give up. I don't even want to look at them. Don't even want to look at them. The real score would probably be lower, but I don't want to play any more than a small handful of these levels. Call me a fraud for not reviewing this game properly if you want. 3 out of 10. I did manage to complete them all as a kid. No, as a teenager, I keep making that mistake, because I have a complete save file. But obviously, that was a long time ago, I don't remember it super well. I probably hated it. Oh, I should probably mention the construction zone, shouldn't I? I still very much have level creator's block, but at least this time I still have my childhood copy of the game, so I have lots of actual levels I made long ago to show you. But in terms of how well designed the UI and stuff is, it's a bit better than the last two. You can pick up objects no matter what you have selected to place. There's a lot of space for levels you make. Those are nice. 6 out of 10, I guess. Hopefully someday I get over this weird mental block I have with creating levels, because I used to love doing it. But for now I have nothing to say. That leaves us with more than half of the levels in the game as 10 out of 10s, and most others only a short distance under, save for a couple of optional stinkers I don't care for. The complaints I have are minor, and mostly only apply to the optional stuff. This game ain't perfect, but it comes really damn near close. 11 out of 12 for gameplay. Arceus, on the other hand, bored me with the frequently extremely lengthy dialogue sections, and keeps going on about these long lists of pointless things to do with every Pokemon that I don't care about. This brings Mario vs Donkey Kong Miniland Mayhem to a grand total of 22 points out of 30, annoyingly tying it with the first game's score. This game is better though. The first game only ties with it because it has an actual story somewhat. Miniland Mayhem is a stupendous game, and the best puzzle game I've ever played. Definitely give it a go if that's your kind of thing.
Okay, I'm finally halfway done with these reviews. Subscribe if you want to see the review for the weird top-down one on the 3DS. Please be easy and quick to review, I'm so tired of doing this!
Can Cove take me home to the cove I belong? Cannons blasting, vibes immaculate. Take me home, Cannon Cove. Yeah, let's just sit with one take there.